already made a Death Knight build in the past. Death Knight being, since this is a Godwin's Death Knight, not that you're going to be a Necromancer or something like that. And we have already made something like this in the past, it's just that at the beginning of the DLC we used the double axes. Now we're using the Longhaft axes. And I've had time to play a little bit more with this weapon so that I can give you a little bit more recommendations, especially when it comes to the Ashes of War that we'll discuss briefly later on the portion section of the Ash of War. But briefly enough, what this guy has, it's range, damage, iframes, immense iframes, and tremendous if you're skilled enough, because it has like kind of a new mechanic, which is something that I like about this kind of new weapons that FromSoft adds in their DLCs, that gives you new tools to play and punish the combos of the enemies and the bosses, because the Ash of War of the weapon has iframes. Those iframes are going to be used to punish combos from the enemies, but we'll talk about them in a little while once we talk about the Ash of War in itself. That being said, this is a very stat-hungry build. Unfortunately, it has 23 strength requirements, and we do want to reach the hard cap for faith here with this build, because that is going to increase the incantation scaling of our Gravelstone seal, which we'll talk about in a little while, but it is going to increase the incantation damage from that, hence increasing our electric damage from our spells, and also increasing the Ash of War damage of our weapon, which is more often than not what's going to punish the combos of the enemies. We'll talk about that in a little while. Strength is a weapon requirement, and usually weapon requirements give you a little bit of AR at the very least, and yes, in here as well, because the weapon has B scaling and strength. So if you would like to build this weapon purely for strength, that's something that could be done, but that would strip you away from the incantations and from the portion, electric damage portion of the Ash of War. Although more often than not, I think that it is going to be physical base. But anyways, I digress. 80 faith for our hard cap on faith. And then dexterity, that's just a consequential little something on my starting class. This should be on 10 because that's the weapon requirements. 23 strength because of the weapon requirements. And then vigor, mind, and endurance, you will see that I stretch them quite a bit in here. I should have 60 vigor, I should have more minds because we're a spellcaster, and I should have more endurance. Although endurance, it's not really that huge of a big deal because the weapon that we'll be using is not that heavy. I'm sorry, the armor that we're using is not that heavy, the weapon is. So ways that you could improve this build if you were to be like a level 200 or a higher level character. Well, raise the vigor to 60, raise minds to 40, raise endurance to 40 as well, and then placing points into strength all the way to 80, that's also a nice idea because like I said, the weapon has scaling on strength as well. That being said, at 80 faith, the weapon is still going to have tremendous AR damage, and also the Ash of War is just going to be tremendously highly damaging as well. The equipment that we have right here is the Death Knight Longhaft Axe plus 10. As for shields, we use just basically any shield that you would have at hands. I like always, this has become like a staple here on the channel. I like this one because it has nice guard boost and it doesn't require that much strength, although we do have strength as a requirement to fill the requirements for shields that you would have in here. So feel free to toy around in this slot right here. And then we have the Gravenstone seal. This has an S scaling on faith, and it also boosts the dragon cult incantations that are also going to be boosted by the Death Knight armor. Here's another concession that you would want to make. This armor, each piece of armor boosts your dragon incantations by 2%, meaning that's a total 8% more damage. However, the thing is that this doesn't allow you to bypass the 51 points threshold, and the weapon Ash of War actually does have hyper armor, so not that you care that much, but you can sometimes get interrupted while you are casting spells, especially the ones from the dragon cult incantations that take a little while for you to cast them. So I'd say that you could change, for example, the Glyphs for the Glyphs of Solitude, maybe if you would want to bypass that 51 poise. Just make sure that you are bypassing the 51 poise, and if not, be aware that sometimes you can get interrupted quite a lot. There's not too much room to toy around here with the talismans, and that actually pains me or baffles me. I have been doing a lot of testing with this build, And there's things that could improve the build, but for example, my recommendations, the ones that I would have as a must, is Shadow of Alexander, like always, for 15% more damage, the Lightning Scorpion Charm, that's 12% more electric damage, overall, general electric damage. You are going to receive 10% more damage, but that is going to be negated by Golden Bow. And then we have the Flux Canvas Talismans to greatly raise the potency of incantations. You could also use, for example, swap in between any of this for the Godfrey icon, because the Godfrey icon is going to increase by 20% the damage of the only one spell that I am specifically using for this build, and that is going to be quite a bit of damage, so that's something that you should want to consider as well. However, the ones that I would have as a base and that I wouldn't change are the ones that I just told you about, and then on the final slot, if you have enough endurance, like with this build, as I have it right here, the Archery Favor +2 is a must because it allows you to retain that medium load right there. But if you do have a little bit more levels, if you do have a little bit more endurance, then you can change this for the Godfrey icon or for anything else that would alleviate, that would give you a little bit of a support something. Right now we're focusing ourselves purely on raw damage and power. So the Ash of War of the weapon, let's actually talk about this because I am in love. It has blink bolts, which is the same that it has with the dual axis. The thing is that this has iframes and it's highly damaging. It also has hyper armor. While you are airborne, it's very difficult for the enemy to stun you. However, it can also be used, as you can see right here, that I'm going to slow-mo this for you so that you can see how epic you look when you can, for example, punish. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to know the combos of the boss that you're fighting against, because here's a little something, here's the trick. It takes a while, it delays. The iframes, they are amazing, they are huge, it has huge iframes. There are better iframes than a regular dodge, however, you have to prepare them. So there's a couple of seconds before you can actually use the iframes that you can get hit, that the enemy can damage you, so those iframes are not going to be instant. So it becomes of this dance into you learning when is the enemy going to perform that combo that you have right there, when can you use it and time it differently than you would, for example, time a regular dodge, because a regular dodge is instant. This is longer iframe animation, but it's not instant, so you do have to find a different timing for it. However, the reward is more damage than the regular punish that you would do, because you have the time where the Ash of War is performed, which is very safe if you manage to bypass those iframes and the boss finish the combo, and then you can follow up even with light or heavy attacks. So yeah, this is very powerful. The spells that I use as a must, you can use any Dragon Cult incantations, but for the sake of cosplay value and just because they are new things that we can try, is the Knight's Lightning Spear. For example, you can cast the Knight's Lightning Spear as well, and then use the Ash of War to punish even more, but that has to be time as well, because remember that what we previously discussed, and then Golden Bow to increase our attack and defense. This is going to nullify the effect that we receive from the Scorpion Charm. The mix of Wondrous Physique is just one that you would have in here, the Lightning Shrouding Cracked Tier to increase our damage by 20%. You could also, for example, use the Strength on Crystal Tia. Remember that we do have a B scaling strength, so this is more damage, but this is a slot that you would use, for example, for your support. Creamberg Crystal Tier, Crimson Burst Crystal Tia, Upperline Bubble Tia, depending on your preferences and needs. If I am in love with this build, it's precisely because of that reason and because of that fact. Especially because of the Ash of War, it changes the playstyle completely. When I wanted to try to fight bosses that I am very familiar with, I was actually struggling because the timing was different. I was accustomed to different timing, so this is going to change your mindset, and this is going to change your playstyle. This is going to feel different. But once you manage to master how those iframes should be used, and that delay that you have on the iframes, it completely becomes into a different walls that you have with the boss fight that you have in front of you. it changes completely, and then again, it allows you to punish it even more. And for those bosses that actually do get away from you, you do still have the option to charge your lightning spears, and also the lightning spears can be used as a punishment before combos or before after you use the Ash of War. Like, there's a huge array of playstyle that you have in here that it just feels tremendously powerful, and more than anything, it feels powerful, it feels very overpowered, but it doesn't feel broken. I think that it is balanced, so there's no fear in this getting patched anytime soon. If you learn how to use this guy, you're going to be a monster. You're going to be a true monster. Anyways, if you like the content, I never super appreciate it. Not only you that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you're in the gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day. I'll be seeing you beautiful people in the next one. Have a great day. Goodbye.